Welcome to the Brewing Wellness podcast, nourishing UFT members one conversation at a time. Brewing Wellness is a podcast created by the UFT Member Assistance Program to support the mental health and well-being of our members. In order to do the work you do every day and be present for your loved ones, students, and patients, your cup has to be full. Brewing Wellness focuses on mental health and wellness topics that can help us all thrive in our professional and personal lives. I'm Selma Williams, and I'm your host, and we're going to be releasing a new episode on the last Monday of each month. And remember to listen to the Brewing Wellness podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It's available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and SoundCloud. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Brewing Wellness podcast. I'm your host, Selma Williams, and of course, Janice Acosta, our wonderful co-host, is here as well.
Thank you, Selma. I'm Janice Acosta, co-host of the Brewing Wellness podcast. So today we're joined by Mike Veny. Mike is a best-selling author, professional drummer, fellow podcaster, and recognized as one of the 100 most influential people in the healthcare industry. His expertise and life experience have been featured on ABC, NBC, and CBS News. Now, Mike is not a stranger to the UFT. He has been the speaker for many of our wellness events, and this is not his first time on the podcast with us. So, Mike, welcome back.
Thank you, and hello to everyone out there. I'm excited to be here today.
We're excited to have you.
Yes.
Today's discussion is geared towards identifying how to find the right therapist. Now, finding a therapist is a very personal and individual experience because we are all seeking therapy for very personal and individual reasons. And obviously, we couldn't think of a better person to have this discussion with than you.
Thank you. Is that because I just got out of therapy and came right over here?
I think so. So. We feel that you got that fresh therapy vibe going on.
Okay.
So while you wear many hats, your primary work is as a certified corporate wellness specialist. And in this work, you openly share your experience with your mental health journey. So help us support our members in grabbing the wheel of their own mental health journey. And maybe you can start with sharing a little bit about yours.
Absolutely. I talk about mental health every single day. And even though I do it professionally, I struggle every single day. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey, and just a reminder as we talk about this sensitive subject, it can be triggering. So if you feel triggered by anything that you hear, I encourage you to reach out to MAP about talking to someone. There's nothing wrong with getting triggered. Actually, our company's mission is to support people in discovering the gift of emotional wellness. I hate the mission.
What?
I hate it because, a mission statement is supposed to inspire, right? No, the mission statement, it makes me angry because I know what it's like to struggle with emotions. And
I get that.
For years, I would think emotional wellness is, you got to feel good all the time. But emotional wellness is showing up for all your emotions.
Yeah.
And I never knew that as a kid. So my journey started with behavior problems. Started in 4th grade when I got expelled from school for fighting with a nun. And I, had lots of behavior problems. Was getting expelled from school, constantly suspended. In fact, when I was doing a principals conference recently, I'm like standing in front of all these principals. It's kind of weird because it's like, you gonna call my dad?
Even still.
Yeah, even still, And at the same time, at home, I would act out with my behavior to the point my parents couldn't control it, and I was hospitalized in a mental hospital several times. And it was a real journey because they didn't know what to do with this kid. Even in my head, I'm like,
I can imagine.
Never thought I'd be here talking about this on a podcast.
Yeah.
And so I know what it's like to struggle. And the thing that started turning my life around was drumming, hitting things in a healthy, proactive way.
Yeah.
And, even though the drumming helped, I still struggle, and I've had some really dark times where it's made it hard. At the same time, I'm a high achiever. who's getting a lot done in his career. And I want to let anyone listening know you can actually be both. You can struggle with mental health and be a high achiever at the same time.
Two things are true.
Yeah, and many high achievers do, actually. So it's totally okay if you're struggling. But the challenge with mental health is that it's confusing, complex, and frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we don't like that as humans. You know, years ago when I was working out in the gym, I was doing this push-up routine where I was trying to impress this woman in the gym. I'm not going to lie. And I ended up hurting my wrist.
Oh.
And I played it off. I left the gym. But I knew it was either a sprain, a strain, or a broken wrist. Ice it for 2 days. If it doesn't get better, call a doctor. Mental health doesn't work that way.
No, it does not.
Usually someone actually confronts you and you're resistant to it. So it's very confusing and complex. And therefore, it can be overwhelming to even think about getting treatment for it. Like, where do I begin?
Yeah.
But if you're thinking about it, that's a really, really good thing. And we're here to help you with some tools around that. Because even though there's more information than ever before, it can still feel like a giant mystery.
And also it's overwhelming. There's so much information out there and almost like too much, where when you go out to look for it, it's like, I don't even know where to start. I don't have the space for this. Let's put it away.
CBT, DBT, elemental P, what is it even like? What? Talk to me in layman's terms. Like, what are you saying? Yeah, it's true. It's so true. And then let's think layer with, do they accept my insurance? Do they have someone that looks like me, that sounds like me, that's from my background? It's so many things. And
Are
it's
they
like,
going to get me? Are they going to understand me?
Yeah.
Because sometimes, and if you're listening right now and you're struggling, sometimes you feel like you're the only one that is going through what it is that you're going through, and no one's ever going to get it.
Yeah.
And that's a very normal thing that many of us have felt at various times.
I always say that, like, one of the beautiful things about being like a mental health clinician, being a therapist, is that we get to actually see how many people are just like us, like how many people are going through hard things just like we are, and it's like, it's
and then
such
we
a
have to
beautiful...
process it.
I know, yes, and then we have to
Oh, wait, so clinicians go through hard times too?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we're triggered in our sessions as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I think I'm going on year 10 in therapy.
Wow.
Work never ends.
Yeah. Every day's a school day.
Every day's a school day.
Well, thank you for the work that you do for your members here. And so, you know, when it comes to therapy, there's also stereotypes that people have. So if I've never been to therapy, what are they going to do? Give me medication? I don't want to go on medication. So a lot of people think that just in seeking therapy, they're going to be prescribed medication. That's the process.
Yeah.
And there's a myth here. First of all, you are in charge of your journey, whether you're going for mental health help or physical health.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's typically, and correct me if I'm wrong, only a psychiatrist that can prescribe medication.
Correct.
A psych nurse practitioner.
A psych nurse practitioner. And even then, you can ask questions and stuff like that.
Yeah, you've got to consent.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily the end-all, be-all medication.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just because you're going to therapy doesn't mean that there will be medication in your treatment.
Correct.
Yeah. And it doesn't make you crazy. It doesn't mean that you're crazy because you're in therapy, right? That perspective is just, it's invaluable when you're in a situation and you only have your one view. Just having someone else to offer an alternative to what you're seeing.
Yeah, and I'm going to say something controversial. Can I do that?
All right.
We can edit this out,
We
right?
can edit it out.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, so throughout our lives, well, let's just start with just kindergarten.
Okay.
From the moment we start school till we finish, we're rewarded for raising our hand and knowing the answer. That is rewarded. And in fact, if you're teaching in the classroom, you are rewarding students for that. When it comes to your mental health, though, you know, there's no way you can do it in your own head and know the right answer. And for a lot of educators, there's a lot of resistance here because it's like, wait, I'm supposed to know the answer. No, you're not.
In school, I learned so much. Why can't I fix myself?
So there's nothing wrong with you if you don't know. When it comes to the mind, you need to bring someone else in there.
Yeah. Someone said in one of my classes that I took, it was like a brain and behavior class, and they said something like, how can we expect to understand the brain and like understand our mind with the same organ? Like, how can we understand something that we're using it to understand it?
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It's like, it's very, what is the word? It's very, inception? So what was that
Inception?
movie? Inception, the movie?
Oh, the Leonardo DiCaprio movie?
Yes, where it's like layered and layered and layered and layered.
So
and
yes,
layered.
if you try to figure out your problems yourself, you end up in the movie Inception.
Yes.
That's why we're here to
In
tell
other words, don't. Please do not.
Yes. And the other thing that I want to bring up is that therapy and counseling are an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
Because there's what you know about yourself and what you don't know about yourself. But therapy and counseling help you learn what you didn't know that you didn't realize that you didn't know about yourself.
Yeah.
That is growth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of times members ask, well, what if I don't like my therapist? What if I don't vibe well with my therapist? What if they are challenging me in ways that I genuinely don't agree with? Like, what do I do then? And I tell them, you can absolutely switch therapists or find someone else or voice that to your therapist.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think, once they found someone, they're stuck. Even from our perspective, if I feel like we have reached the end of our road as client and therapist, I'll say that and say maybe it's time for you to explore someone else who can help you a little bit better than I can. So it's a two-way street. It's not just it's like healthcare. Mental health care is healthcare, and if you have a provider that you don't agree with or you want a second opinion, by all means, do so. Yeah,
you are in the driver's seat here. So if you're listening and you're thinking about this, you are in the driver's seat. And I love what you said, because sometimes you're working with a therapist and you're like thinking, well, is this really working anymore? That's often a sign that the therapist has done well with you.
Yeah.
And,
true.
and maybe it's time to move on because
point
you've grown. So it's very, very important. And keep in mind, too, I just want to bring up something you brought up about what if I feel like my therapist is making me uncomfortable. I had this issue when I started therapy because I didn't like it. And I realized, I'm going to admit this out loud, that a lot of it was my control issues coming into play because I wanted to control. Again, going back to being an educator, you're in control of the classroom, in control of your lessons. In therapy, you have to give up some level of control, which is hard for all of us.
So hard.
Absolutely.
So hard.
We need a whole episode on that.
A whole season.
I watched the Netflix documentary Painkiller, and it was really good. But one of the points in the movie was that we're all running from pain in some way, shape, or form. And that's why abuse of opioids and all the things that we use, the different substances, whether it's sugar, whatever the substance that you use to avoid pain, that's why there's so many of them and why we get so addicted. But pain is a very good indicator that something is wrong. And so if we constantly mask our pain, we'll never be able to get to the root and to be able to heal the thing that needs healing. So I think a lot of us are walking around, listening to our podcasts, which are great. Listen on. But being able to have someone to speak specifically to what's going on with you and have you sit in that discomfort and that pain a little bit, it's needed. It's necessary for growth.
And a lot of times we think of pain as like a physical pain. But when we're talking about mental health, we're talking about like emotional pain. So
Anguish.
Like anxiety. Anguish, loss, anger.
Sorrow.
Oof.
So I just told you that I got out of therapy. I've had the same therapist for about 10 years now. And we actually talked about, I'm not going to go into all the details, but basically something triggered me yesterday. And I was in a lot of emotional pain. And we were laughing about the fact that she was like, what did you do? And I said, well, this morning I don't know, sat in bed and said, let me feel the pain. And just smile there, sitting there feeling my pain. And when I started with her, I used to get angry when she suggested feeling my feelings. And I want to say something about pain, because pain is actually not a bad thing. We don't necessarily like it. I mean, think about those of you that exercise know what I'm talking about here, right?
No pain, no gain.
No pain, no gain. But there's a difference between pain and suffering. And when you're suffering, going to a therapist or counselor can help you navigate that, which is so important.
And figure out how to get out of the suffering and comfortably sit with the pain.
And manage your moments. That's because sometimes that's all you've got, just to make it to that next moment. And that's what a therapist can give you, those tools, and it might not work right away.
Wait,
right?
what? Excuse me?
No, take this for 7 days, and it's, the infection is gone.
Oh, no.
It might not work right away. And certain treatments might not work. Like we were talking this morning about this new treatment that I heard about. Janice, her brain is amazing. She remembers everything and she knows all things. But there are some mental health conditions that are resistant to even medication, right? And so you have to think of alternative ways. And I mean, the people are brilliant and are coming up with new things every day. But so don't feel othered or left out because it's not quote unquote working, or it's not working as fast as you would like. Mm-hmm. It's not a one size fits all. Yeah.
Absolutely, and we like things to, be a one size fits all. We really do. We want. I think I was telling you that I was driving my smart car on a Sunday with my dog, little Shih Tzu, and there was some kind of sound in the car, and he's looking at me like, "Yo," like. So I took it to a mechanic in Queens on Jamaica Avenue. Has it up there on the platform for like 2 hours, and he couldn't find anything wrong with it. And, I mean, this sound was loud and obnoxious, and I'm angry. Like, I just gave you my car for 2 hours. You can't find the problem?
What do you mean you can't
Right.
find the problem?
And that's how we go about therapy. So realize that when you start it, you're starting a process, and this is what I had to learn. It's a process, and sometimes the results come over time, not in session. It might be 6 weeks after a session. You're walking down the block, and you just have something come to you, and it's like, oh.
That's what my therapist meant.
Now I'm connecting the dots, and you get these golden moments of growth that feel so good.
Yeah, I agree. And, you learn that what's unhealthy for someone else might be just what you need, meaning in a harm reduction model, I might go from drinking 3 beers to 1, right? And for someone else, that 1 is a struggle, but it's progress for you. So not necessarily measuring your barometer of success based on anyone else's thing you've heard or seen on TV. We're all wearing our masks daily. We really have to take on our own issues and situations in therapy and really, really mean and want to be and show up, right, to be there for ourselves. That's real self-care.
Well, maybe I can ask about that, because when I'm fortunate that I've found a therapist that is the right fit for me for now, and
10 years is a long for now.
It is. Well, part of me realized, and I love what you said before about the resistance, that maybe my resistance was part of the problem here. And to blindly trust and to see certain victories over time. And keep in mind, I'm saying this as I still struggle, but it's not taking over my life like it used to. That's really the thing. You can still have the same struggle, but it's not ruling you the way it used to. That's what you're looking for a lot of the time. But one of the questions that I had when I was looking is there were so many different types of therapy. Like this one does CBT, DBT. Which one is right for me? And what's out there?
So yes, there are so many different types of therapy out there, right? If we are struggling with anxiety or symptoms of depression, or maybe we just lost someone, right? If we have some trauma that's in our past, whether it be big T or little t trauma, there's so many different ways out there that therapists are trained in to help support you in navigating whatever that is. So that can look like something like CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, often used to help with anxiety. And that really, what that does is it really keeps us focused in the moment, has us challenging the thoughts that may be coming along and impacting us in the moment, and really start to understand them better, understand the root behind them, so we can process them and move on. And as you said, Mike, it's not ruining our day. Right? So other types of therapy, and this is like what people mostly think of when they think of therapy, of like laying on the couch and Sigmund Freud and, what we've learned in school, or that one
TV.
psychology class. And TV.
Well, is that called psychoanalytic psychotherapy?
Exactly.
That's what I take.
Yeah. Do you lay on a couch?
Actually, when I see her in person, yes, she lets me lay on the couch. It's so much fun.
I fall asleep.
Well, and can I just tell you why it is? Because you're not looking at the person.
Yeah.
So you're free to free associate, and different things come out of you when you're not looking at somebody.
Yeah,
it's
it's
true.
true. It's very true. Jinx. So psychoanalytic therapy, as you were saying, Mike, is born. It's like the origins of psychotherapy, the origins of therapy, and really focuses on like our childhood and our past. Like when you think of like therapy, a lot of people come to us and they're like, "What, are you just going to ask me about my childhood and how my mom was? My mom was great." And it's like, yes.
Yeah.
I hope your parents were good to you. And also, yes, your childhood does impact who we are today. Big time.
Big time.
Right? Those relationships are lasting throughout all of our relationships.
Yeah.
So, CBT is a big one. Psychoanalysis is a big one. DBT and has been one that's coming up a lot more often, a lot more frequently. That one, similar to CBT, keeps us focused on what's going on in the moment, how we're feeling in the moment.
And skills.
Teaches a lot of skills.
Yeah.
Skills to help cope with those uncomfortable moments, those moments of distress that we're feeling, where we just want to throw everything away or do something worse.
Yeah, when I think about DBT, I think about making rash decisions, or if I'm that kind of, because I am, I make a lot of feelings. I make a lot of decisions when I'm in my emotions and my feelings, and really using those DBT skills. Whew, they have saved my credit card. They have saved me a couple of pounds, I'm sure. I could do a little better in that area as well. So I lean heavily towards DBT in my sessions with clients and in my own personal therapy. I think that just works for me, but it doesn't have to work for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's some folks that just marry kind of all of the modalities and the treatment types. I think they kind of borrow and see, and I kind of like that method, because you're meeting the client or the member, in our case, where they are. Yeah. Whatever they need in the moment is what we try to be. I mean, there are people that study all of these treatment styles like to the T, and I'm sure they're amazing in it. And so I don't want to take anything from that, but I do like, that's just me. I like a lot of flavors.
Yeah, right. And it's just about finding and understanding what's right for you and what fits for you. So along with that, right, it's important to, there's a saying that they say, like, date your therapist, right?
Please do.
Ask your therapist lots of questions.
Yeah. Such an interesting subject here. Well, one thing that I want to remind you is, and this goes back to what you said, therapy is like dating in that, after 2 or 3 dates, you might get a feel for if this person is right to continue on with, or maybe not. Yeah. Sometimes it takes a little longer than that, but the same is true in therapy. You'll just know by gut feeling if it's a fit or not. And it doesn't have to be. You don't need to force it, and there's nothing wrong with asking questions. A lot of times we're in a society, in certain cultures that people grow up in, are all about you just told what to do. You do what the doctor tells you. For those of you listening who've grown up in a culture like that, no, you don't have to. And we encourage you to ask questions. If you don't understand something, if you don't understand why your therapist is asking you something or doing something a certain way, ask. You have a right to know, and it's going to help you in your journey. So date your therapist.
Ask questions. Be curious.
Confront. All the things. Whatever's needed, right? Because at the end of the day, it's your care. It's your care.
So, okay, I get the whole like DBT, CBT, and the many others, but like psychologist, social worker, licensed counselor, psychiatrist, like what's going on here?
Valid question. I mean, we have members call us all the time asking like, oh, I need a psychologist, or but I don't want to take medication, or I need a psychiatrist, but I don't want to take medication. And so I guess the important things to know when it comes to mental health, right, are there individuals who prescribe medication. So those would be MD or, yeah, they are MDs. Yeah. So those people would be MDs, such as a psychiatrist or a psychiatric nurse practitioner, which is not an MD, but a nurse licensed to prescribe psychiatric medication. So when you're meeting with a psychiatrist or a psychiatric nurse practitioner, it's likely that there will be some sort of medication that will be involved in your treatment. Not necessarily mandatory, but it's highly likely because that's what they specialize in.
That's your lens.
Yeah. And then there are other therapists, such as psychologists. Sounds similar to psychiatrists, but different. So there's psychologists that have studied psychology. There's licensed mental health counselors that are specialized in mental health counseling. And then there are social workers. So social workers, you know, a lot of us are social workers here. Yes, social workers are trained to do therapy. And they're also trained to look at the whole, the person as a whole, all the things that happen in our world and in our environment and how those things impact us. Right, so someone that you're looking for when you're thinking of talk therapy, I just want to talk to someone, I want to talk to a therapist, right? You'll want to look for a psychologist, a social worker, or a licensed mental health counselor. In other states, that profession, the licensed mental health counselor profession is also called a licensed professional counselor or something like that, depending on where you live. And if you're thinking that medication is something that may be right for you, then you're going to want to start to look for either a psychiatrist or a psychiatric nurse practitioner to support you in that part of your journey.
And yes, and I just want to say when it comes to medication, educate yourself. It's for those of us who find successful treatment, it's usually a combination of things, and it's your own unique combination. The other thing I want to say, this is a very important disclaimer, your friend is not your therapist.
Yes.
What do you mean?
Your
Or
friend,
your auntie.
yeah, that, because
The girl.
she always has the answers. And here's why, and I want to be very honest here. You don't want to ever put that emotional weight on a friend. That's not fair to your friend or family member. So if you're thinking that about someone, they're a good friend, but I really encourage you to seek professional help.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, right, your friend may or may not be trained in helping you, in a specific modality or a certain type of therapy that would be beneficial to you.
Yeah. And you want the relationship to be not a close relationship with someone, not a family member, friend, or spouse, because you need that space to be able just to speak your mind in a judgment-free zone.
Yeah,
absolutely. Especially when it comes to relationship things. When you're struggling with familial relationships or romantic relationships, maybe involving your best friend isn't a good idea. I mean, because when you've moved on,
Yup.
best friend has the hatchet ready to come for your spouse, and we want it to be a nice, loving, kumbaya environment after that. So maybe don't do that, okay? Ask me how I know. Just take my advice for it, okay? But yeah, seriously though, that unbiased or non-biased opinion is really what you need, and you don't want to walk after you've given all your deep dark secrets to walk past them on the street. Like, you want to be able to leave it there and leave it in that space and return to it when you're ready to process the next session. So yeah. Professionals are important.
I think it's all, on that note, it's also important to know and to be aware of, like, your therapist is ethically and morally bound to keep your secrets, right? So there is nothing that you can say that we have not heard.
And legally.
And legally bound to keep your secrets, right? If you're worried about saying something that you've never told anyone, maybe a therapist is the best place for you to say that, to share that, to release that, because it can really, really be just
freeing.
Yeah, I mean, it's we carry around so much, and it doesn't mean you don't trust a significant other or family member, but just having that space with someone that you don't have a deep relationship with or intimate relationship with is just a beautiful thing in this world. It really is, you know. And the other thing I want to say is we're talking about all the challenges you have, and you can talk about, you can also laugh with your therapist too. And, you know, it's, and believe it or not, that's processing emotions too. When there's a victory, something major happened at work that you want to celebrate. Well, there's emotions that come with that, even though we consider them positive. Processing that is important.
Yeah, and therapy doesn't always have to be a negative space, or you don't have to always go to therapy and be like, okay, I have to tell them all the bad things that happened. Like, it's a space for that, and also it's a space to celebrate.
Celebrate the wins, and no matter the size, right? And you might bring your small win to a friend or a coworker, and they're like, oh, okay. Which your therapist will really be able to make some connections to your personal growth through that win.
Well,
which is like,
we talked about my dog recently, and he was in the room too, because we think he got some...
His separation anxiety?
Well, he got something going on. He's got his own. Yeah, I don't. You know, he's got his own stuff, right?
He needs a pet therapist.
He does. You know.
We can start a group. I've got one too. Oh goodness. Oh gosh.
So if I'm a member, hypothetically, I've always wanted to ask you this actually, and I'm reaching out for help. Like, what's the process? What happens?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Well, here at MAP, we provide a plethora of mental health services. So we provide members with short-term counseling. And when we say short, we mean short. That is up to 6 sessions. And that's because there are so many members. And we want to be able to give everyone an opportunity, should they want to seize it, to be able to connect with a therapist for free. So this is a great gateway for those who've never been in therapy. A lot of our members come fresh and they're nervous, and by the 4th, 5th session, they're like, all right, roll me over to someone else who can see me long term. And so that is kind of, you know, the meat and the potatoes of the members that we see. But, you know, we also will see, you know, members that have been in treatment before as well. So we provide short-term individual counseling. We also have virtual support groups, which Janice is amazing at coordinating, with great topics from anger management to grief and bereavement and all the things.
Delve in a little bit of DBT.
Yes, we have a DBT skills group, which is great. I mean, for me, you know, I'm a DBT girl. Wellness workshops, our well-being series, and also Shattering the Stigma, which Janice can talk a little bit about.
So Shattering the Stigma is a workshop that we host. It's a virtual workshop, so very easy to attend. In this workshop, we've partnered with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, where they have trained volunteers who talk about their personal struggles with mental health and what that journey's been like for them. It's really incredible and powerful to hear from individuals who are living and thriving with mental illnesses, and to hear their journey of how they got to where they are today.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I love Shattering the Stigma series. We also offer professional developments for New York State licensed social workers, mental health counselors, and psychologists. And we also provide referrals for family members. So unfortunately, we do not see family members, but we will offer you referrals to people in your neighborhood, in your area, virtual. I mean, everyone's doing virtual now, so that your loved ones can be seen as well. If you want to learn more, you can go to uft.org/map or email us at mapinfo@uft.org, and we'll get back to you within 48 hours. And we're going to be moving to in-person events as well. So look out for that. And you can find us, if you want to find us, at uft.org/map, or you can email us at mapinfo@uft.org.
So listen, if you're struggling out there, it's okay. And I hope you got a lot of information today about next steps. And sometimes all you need to do is just take that small action step of reaching out. And I really encourage you to do that. If you're on the fence about it, you can just try doing it. And you learned about the different types or several types of therapy that are out there, and the different types of therapists that are out there. You learned about your role in the process. You know, it takes two. And one thing I actually just want to say to that is it's not just about the therapist doing work. You have to do your own work in between sessions because you're going to learn some uncomfortable things sometimes, but that's your homework, and you all know about giving homework. So I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to reach out to MAP. There's so many resources here. You know, you've got support groups, you've got workshops, and you've got help for family members who might be struggling, ways to get them help. So there's no excuse not to reach out.
Thank you for that. That was such a beautiful plug.
Oh, well, thank you.
So now that you've given us this wonderful plug, Mike, we want to give you the opportunity to plug all the incredible work that you do. Where can our members find you if they want more of you?
You can find me at Starbucks.
He drinks a blonde roast.
Yes, sitting in the back. No, if you'd like to reach out, you can find me at www.mikeveny.com. I have a podcast called the Better Mental Podcast, bettermental.fm, where my co-host and I talk about what it's like to run a small business, be a business owner, entrepreneur, and struggle with mental health. In addition, my company has courses now, and one of the things that we're coming out with, so by the time this episode comes out, it's going to be in book format, Fill Your Cup, The Exhausted Educator's Guide to Emotional Wellness.
Love it.
It's the same course that I have on my website that you can see, but we put it in book format so it'll be easily accessible. So many resources in there. And what's been really nice is so many teachers have actually seen it and said, oh my God, I need this. This is so helpful. I'll never forget putting this together. Everyone on the team, we'd see different chapters and come through the email, like review this when you can. Oh my gosh, it was just getting so deep in the conversations with the exercises we were doing for ourselves. So encourage you to check that out. And I'm a fellow New Yorker, so I'm your neighbor. You can always reach out to me directly through my website.
And we will have the pleasure of having Mike for one of our well-being series coming up in March.
Yeah, so be on the lookout for that. Well, thank you, Mike, for joining us today. This has been an experience of all experiences.
It's been an adventure. We're so glad that you took the time to be here and be with us.
Yes.
Well, thank you both, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Brewing Wellness Podcast. If you are a UFT member, the Members Assistance Program can be reached at 212-701-9620 or by emailing mapinfo@uft.org.